Good evening and welcome to tonight's event, Be in the Know, Ohio. I just ask as a courtesy, can everyone make sure your phones are put on silent? And we lost a vital member of our community this week with the death of our former mayor, Bob Armstrong. I'd like everybody to please stand for a moment of silence and remembrance. Thank you, everyone. Stay standing because we're now going to have the Pledge of Allegiance with, led by our first responders, firefighter and EMTs Augie Deal and Rebecca Kirkland. Thanks. My 3 grown children all graduated from Marysville High School, and I have had the honor and privilege to be a family doctor in Defiance for 25 years. Tending to the needs and concerns of my patients of all ages to the best of my abilities. The highlight of my years in office practice was providing obstetrical care to many women and helping them deliver healthy babies. I'm now retired from office practice, but continue to provide care in our community as a hospice physician. My calling as a physician requires me to always ask questions. It's how I come to understand the needs of those I care for. Only then can I act to heal. There will be many questions posed this evening. I'd like to begin by asking one of my own. Why are you here tonight? Surely you could use the time to shorten a to-do list. You could use the time with family. You could use the rest. Still, you chose to be here instead. Why? I'm going to assume that you're here because you care. Our nation, state, and local communities are hurting, and this hurt comes from many things. Misunderstanding, misinformation, anger, and fear. What do they have in common? They're all rooted in a condition of not knowing. In my experience, patients are relieved when they begin to know more about their condition. Then they can become actors in their own healing. The conditions we are addressing tonight can come from a deficiency of knowledge, a weakness of understanding, and a breakdown in communication with others. We're here tonight because we want to feel better about ourselves and our community. We are seeking truth over misinformation, and we are acting with courage rather than fear. We need each other in this journey back to feeling better in our own lives and in our communities. We must heal together. A single system of the human body can affect the whole person. Likewise, our small towns are not isolated from the whole of America. It is a certainty our family farms, local businesses, public schools, and rural hospitals will be directly affected by the budget bills drafted in Columbus and Washington, D.C. We may be from small towns, but there are no small politics. We are part of a larger nation and world. Conversations made possible by this gathering are an opportunity. Our knowledge is essential for action. To be in the know is to equip our communities with the understanding necessary to take care of our home, our own, and one another. Thank you for being here to help in this endeavor because you are an irreplaceable caretaker of our community. You are necessary and valued. I would next like to extend this gratitude to our panelists. They have prioritized me and you and our communities by being here tonight. Allow me to introduce them to you. Hannah Halbert is the Executive Director of Policy Matters Ohio. She will discuss family economic well-being. Kristie Reighard is an elected member of the State Board of Education. Tonight she will present Public Education on the Line, how policy decisions affect every student. Dr. Bryan Hambley is an Ohio Democratic candidate for Secretary of State and a leukemia specialist in Cincinnati. He will discuss healthcare, health coverage, and food insecurity in Ohio. Eugenio Mollo is a clinical associate professor of law at the University of Toledo, where he launched the Immigration Justice Clinic. He will explain current issues concerning immigration law and deportation. Finally, I'd like to introduce Chris Gibbs. He's right there. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Chris is a farmer who worked for the USDA for 30 years. He is the Democratic chair for Shelby County and the newly elected chair of the Ohio Democratic Party Rural Caucus. Chris will moderate this evening's discussion. Panelists, you have each traveled here tonight because you have knowledge, truth, and bold compassion to share with us, and you have come to hear our voices as well. We are grateful for your generosity and an opportunity to be in the know together. So tonight, we listen with care to all our guests and fellow community members have to share so that we may become actors in healing our communities. Now it is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Chris Gibbs.
Tonight, the organizers and the panelists have stepped up and stepped out to help us all understand how the policies and actions of our elected officials, starting from the White House to the U.S. Capitol, through our state houses, down into our communities, and landing right at our kitchen tables, make a difference. And our kitchen tables is where the rubber meets the road, where we discuss our dreams for our children and for our future, where we discuss the monthly calendar of soccer games, preschool schedules, and who's going to check on Grandma and Grandpa next, who's got that responsibility. We lament and wonder where the money's going to come from for the new tires on the old car, and will we have to sacrifice a well-deserved night out on the town just to make that commitment. My story is similar. For me, I'm a farmer, that you've heard. And just like me, all of our farmers are struggling. They've got their struggles too. Today is financial, a financial struggle. Farmers like me and all across the nation are facing a real cash flow and working capital crisis. Commodity prices are low or at the cost of production, and most are below the cost of production. Input costs are at an all-time high, prompting bankers to rein in lending, and interest rates are still high, of course. Punitive tariffs have eroded the goodwill that farmers and commodity organizations, we have traveled all around the United States, all around the world, if you will, over the past 4 decades, creating trade deals, handshake deals, to make sure that we could market our commodities overseas, and that we would never end up in the spot that we were in the mid-'80s when we had grain running in the streets and high yields and low commodity prices. We made sure at that time that we had an outlet for our commodities, and the best way that farmers know, that the industry knows how to take care of rural communities like this one, is to sell commodities overseas. Because those dollars go directly to agriculture and farmers. I gotta tell you a little secret, we don't sit on our money. We spend it all. And we spend it in our rural communities. We spend it at the new truck store, we spend it at the used truck store, we spend it at the feed store, we spend it at the seed store, we spend it at Walmart, we spend it at the mechanic store, we spend it everywhere in our communities, including our public schools. Because farmers that own the land, we're the ones paying the freight on property taxes and supporting the important our public schools. So that's where agriculture is right at the moment. And I'll play the role sometime, if asked, of one of our panelists, if you have any ag questions or farmer questions or small rural communities. So that's my short story, but we're not here for me. Or even any of our panelists. We're here for you. We're here for you tonight. We see you. You are seen. And we hear you. We will hear you. Now, we're going to hear from our panelists here in just a minute, but you should have been handed, or maybe had the opportunity to take some cards, little cards, and hopefully you've got a pencil or a pen. If you have questions for the panelists, go ahead and write those down. There'll be people circulating, some facilitators, to take those questions, and I'll try to read them. The young man over there has got some, and I'll try to read those for you, and we'll direct them. You can direct them to one of the panelists, or you can direct them at large, and I'll just pick somebody that I think can handle the question.
I'm telling you, I'm so thrilled to see so many people out. Absolutely thrilled to see it. Like the folks who introduced us said, my name is Hannah Halbert. I'm the executive director of a group called Policy Matters Ohio, and I'm telling you, I am delighted to be here. I want to thank the hosts, I want to thank Rebecca, I want to thank Ed, I want to thank the party, and I want to thank the UAW for opening their doors tonight to us. Policy Matters, we're a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank. Okay, so we write about policies, mostly at the statewide level, and we look at things to see, hey, how's this working for everyday Ohioans? Are these policies and these decisions making the economy work for all of us or just a few of us? And while I'm delighted to be invited by the party, we are nonpartisan, so I'm going to give that disclaimer. My participation isn't an endorsement, but I'm delighted to be here. And I'll just say, we got very limited time, so if you like what I'm talking about tonight, please check us out on the internet. We have tons of reports, not just about the economy, not just about what's going on at the federal level in terms of the impacts of the big, gnarly mega bill and the state budget on everyday families. But we also have things like a district school fact sheet. So every district in the state of Ohio, we will have a fact sheet for your district that says exactly how this budget, the state budget, is going to impact your school district. We're updating those, so the changes to the property tax that just happened, just got passed, we're going to update those so that number will be rolled in as well. So you can get as complete a picture as we can give you on what's going on in your town, in your school from that budget. So if you like that, follow us, policymattersohio.org. All right. So I'm supposed to be talking about family economic security. And I think the other alternative title for this talk is wages and taxes. But nobody would be here for that. So the typical Ohio worker is earning about $4 more now than they did in 1999. Well, that right there tells you the whole story. That's simply not enough. And that includes inflation. Okay, so they're beating inflation by about $4. That ain't going to make it. And then whenever you look at something straightforward like a carton of eggs, what does that actually mean on something like your grocery budget? Well, back in 99, the typical hourly wage, it would cost you about 7.4% of that wage to buy a carton of eggs. Last year, the most recent numbers, it is up to 16.7%. So you're getting about $4 more, but you're spending nearly double the share of what you did that just to buy eggs, right? And so Ohio, these are Ohio figures, right? So Ohio workers, even when they're doing well and they've got to that middle, the actual median level of the state economy, they're still struggling. It's not, that dollar isn't doing what it used to do. And similarly, when we look at things like unemployment, I know we've had this really great unemployment number for a while now. And that's good. That has helped drive up wages just over the recent post-pandemic years. That's great. When you dig deeper, though, you see that Ohio's employment to population ratio, so this is just how many people in the state are working, right? That number has shrunk, right? So 64% down to 59. That's trouble. So even though we have a low unemployment rate, we have fewer people in the workforce and fewer people working. We have an aging population. The problem is that we're not getting workers to stay, young people to stay and build their families here, and we're not getting that replacement. That says that Ohio's economy is broken. And what we're seeing now is the reversal of that, and that shows up right there in that employment to population ratio. And as you're hearing some of the policies discussed tonight, you can think, are these the things that will bring people into this state? Is this the direction that's going to correct for this? that's going to draw people in. It's going to keep kids and families here together. Okay? So I have put more than you ever want to know in these slots. But that's so you can have them and look at them. If you have questions, follow up. Happy to do talks elsewhere at different times. Ohio's productivity, you can see it keeps going. Working people are working. People are making money. But that's just not being shared with working people. So you see median wages largely flat until we get to post-Great Recession, where there's big investments from the federal government to help get things back on track after the housing crisis. And then again, after the COVID pandemic, you see a little catching up on the worker end, right? But this is, by and large, a gap that policy needs to start solving. And another piece of this sort of hollowing out that we're experiencing together is the loss of manufacturing. So Defiance is down about 56% in terms of manufacturing since 1999. When we look at where most people are working, these are the 10 largest occupations in the region. 3 of them pay so little that a typical worker, 40 hours a week, year-round, won't make enough for a family of 3 to not need food assistance, right? Year-round, doing everything they can, still going to need food assistance. 9 out of 10 pay so below the sort of cost of living index for the region. And these are the biggest occupations in this region. All right, how are we doing? Whew, all right. Tax code in 3 minutes, okay? Speed run. Why is this happening? Right? Like, the economy doesn't have to be like this. The economy's not just like the weather or, I think a lot of folks want to, our counterparts at the Buckeye Institute, bless them, they want to, say, well, it's just the market. It's just the market expressing itself. Well, there's a lot of rules that are underlying what's happening in that market. And for a long time, particularly in Ohio, those rules have been rigged against middle class and working class Ohioans. And one of the places where you see that very clearly, and whenever we're trying to see why is all this happening with education? Why is this happening with Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security? Why is all of this basic package of social goods that helps our quality of life, why is that all under threat and insufficient? Well, it's because the rules of the tax code have been rigged to take the investments that should be going into those programs that help the majority of us so that we can get a tax cut for the very, very wealthiest among us, okay? So very quickly, Ohio, in the last budget, as an example, Ohio just enacted a 2.75% flat tax, saying, well, that's fair. Everybody's going to pay the same rate. Here's what that gets us. That's going to cost us $1.6 billion over the next 2 years out of our state budget. That could have gone to solve the crisis that we are having in public schools. That could have gone to solve the property tax squeeze that's happening. That's money that had uses. We needed that revenue. Instead, it's going to go to, the vast majority of that is going to go to the top 1% of Ohioans who have annual incomes averaging over $1 million. That's who's getting that tax cut.
Next up, Kristie Reighard is elected member of the State Board of Education. Kristie, you have the floor.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. My story is part of why I believe in what is going wrong with public education. I taught for 18 years. I taught at Bowling Green High School, which still is a suburban school. And then at Penn Career Center, a vocational school, where I had lots of different types of students. I was principal at Delta High School, so I saw a rural population. And then I ended my career teaching in Toledo Public. I've seen those rural students. I've seen the urban students, and there's much more in common than one would ever think between those districts. But I've also raised 3 kids. I had one that was gifted, I had one that was special needs, and I had a typical student. Each of them thrived in Ohio's public schools. They are all tax-paying citizens today. One went straight into the military. She is still in the military as an Army recruiter out of Cleveland. I have one that works at the Wasion water plant, went into the workforce. And then I have one that went into pharmacy, and she is a resident pharmacist down at University of Cincinnati. Public schools gave my kids, who were very different, these opportunities. And all those students that I saw in those different types of buildings, they need those same opportunities. And what we're seeing happening in education is eliminating a lot of those. At the state board, our major responsibilities have shrank starting with the last budget. So we used to be concerned with a lot more. The curriculum standards, the testing standards. Today, we are left with educator licensure and conduct. That's a big part of what we spend our time on. And we appoint the superintendent. We look at policy review. Educator Standards Board, what it means to be a good educator, how we should act, how we should treat people, how we should use AI. What's that technology like? One of the best parts of my job is the Teacher of the Year, who is from my district this year. So he was announced a couple of weeks ago. That is an exciting to lift teachers up because they are doing great things. And then the last thing that we concentrate on are these territory transfers. So at the end of this budget, well, not at the end of this budget, at the end of my term, we will no longer be an elected state board. That is something that has been taken away. We will go from our 8 appointed and 11 elected members to 5 appointed members. They will represent urban, rural, suburban districts. And then the 2 others, one's a charter school appointment and the other is private. 90% of our kids in Ohio attend public schools. The State Board of Education will be represented by 40% that doesn't even have an interest in public schools. So that's coming. When we look at both the federal and the state budget, and I know this is hard to adjust, I know this is hard to hear, because public schools are a way of life out here. We have very few private schools, very few charter schools. But what these current legislation pieces are doing is systematically dismantling public education as we know it. They are taking it into 2 parts, the have and the have-nots. Charter schools, private schools don't have to take every child. Public schools do. Public schools are a place, or should be a place, where every student belongs. They are included. They are a part of that process. And that's not always the case in the private and charter schools, among many other things that I could talk hours on. And so what this boils down to is our students have fewer educational opportunities. We talked about the budget, and just this last couple of days, they have vetoed another part of the taxes for schools and limiting and strangling what we can do with levies. Fewer student opportunities. If we don't have the money to educate these students, because it's going over to charter schools, which they call community schools, which they really aren't. But they try to trick you in that a community school is really a charter school by definition. So don't let them trick you, because they don't have to take all students. And all students in Ohio are they're so worthy of this. They're worthy of this public education, every single one of them. And they result in less local control. While the big push from the federal government is that, give the control back to the states, they're taking away the control at the local level. So I've got this divided into some key aspects of federal updates, Project 2025, what is happening. Out of all of that, the one piece of good news in there is it's going to take an act of Congress to dismantle the Department of Education. Only Congress can officially do that. That is a point that we're holding on to. So while executive orders are being signed, while they are starting the process of doing some of these things, many of these pieces and parts belong in Congress's hand. So we know that Congress isn't doing much right now. We know they're not going to get much done. So hopefully that is the silver lining of all of this. But it is impacting our students nonetheless. And the federal updates mirror what the state is doing. That's the other part of this. So the Secretary of Education, this is sort of my bridge from the federal to the state. She visited Ohio last week. State Board of Education members were not invited. She met with the legislators. She gave some money to our charter schools. Yeah, you know, State Board of Education, not included. Because that's not what's important to them. Not every kid is of value. And I can tell you, every kid, even the kid that drove me the most nuts, needed the most love, and he was worthy because that kid probably was going to make a bigger difference than a lot of the kids because they had so much potential. They had just that drive to do something, even if it was to drive the teacher nuts. So the state of Ohio, these are some bills that have passed. Parents' Bill of Rights, December 2024. SB 1, and this is a Higher Education Act, but I want to point out what has gone on here because it's trickling down to be enacted in the K-12 education system. Okay. Things like getting rid of diversity and inclusion. Rural students, that's diversity. When they go off to college, rural students have some perks. That's not going to be necessarily the case. And we've got all those other diversity pieces as well. And as an educator, the piece that really, really bugs me is the legislation about academic freedom to express yourself. You know what? In a classroom, I'm sorry, I don't have time at the college level or the high school level to listen to the flat earthers. Like, that's not what is important, okay? Yes, they exist. Yes, in passing. But if we have to give equal time to the flat earthers, come on. You know, education time is precious. We value in public education every moment that we have. Those are some of the things that are coming down to the K-12. And then the state budget bill. Again, I said we've been eliminated, among many other things in there as well. And I know I am short on time. Oh, I'm over already. So, pending legislation, I put this together. There have been 4 things that I have found in the last 2 days that just threw me for a loop. One of them was, and I've got to put my glasses on to get the number right, House Bill 485, Baby Olivia Act. This legislation is mandating, again, that local control, not there, 3-minute embryo development video every year for students in grades 3 and up. Ohio's not the first one to put this on. This is following other states. It's a throw as much as we can at the wall with spaghetti to see what sticks. And unfortunately right now, they're not listening to us. And we're having to fight tooth and nail. And the other big one was the veto override, number 66, that carryover money the way that levies can be placed on the ballot. And the Student Success Act really bothers me as well. That curriculum, again, local control, not there. This states that it will be taught in grades 6 through 12, that you graduate high school, you get a job, you get married. That they're telling you that is the way and the only way to be successful in life. And then you have kids. You know, not the way I did it. Not the way that many people do it. But that's the way that we're trying to get everyone to think the same and not think for themselves, that this is the way. So, what I can tell you is that I work in many states. And Ohio's public education teachers are among the best. In 2000, we were 5th in the nation in our schools and our students. I believe public schools are still there, except we've got all this charter school mess and all this private school mess and vouchers. And I could spend a lot of time on those topics too. Because if we're paying for students to go to private schools from your tax dollars, and we don't even have any private schools out here, that's an issue. So I will be speaking again, along with several others, on November 13th in Archibald, and the whole evening will be about education. So I don't have much more information on that right now, but I thank you for listening to me and letting me share my story and why every student in Ohio is important and why it matters that we continue to make this a priority for every student.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Bryan Hambley is a physician and also a Democratic candidate for Ohio's Secretary of State. Bryan, you have the floor.
I am running for Secretary of State, but I won't be talking about the political side tonight. I grew up on a small family farm in a rural community and am passionate about great rural health care. And so what I want to do tonight is to tell you 4 stories about how important and successful rural health care is. First, has anybody called 911 on a family member or themselves needing help? Yeah, in the back. What did you call for? Who was sick, ma'am?
My mom.
Yeah. Did they get there pretty quick?
Yeah.
How quick they get there?
I live about 5 blocks away, so within 4 minutes.
Wow, 4 minutes. That's response time. So I'll tell you a story that goes right along with that. I'm also board certified in critical care, and I was moonlighting in the evening in a rural hospital. And I got a strange call from the ICU to the emergency room. And it was a charge nurse in the emergency room. And she said, Dr. Hambley, we've got an unusual patient, came in after a cardiac arrest. Could you come down? And I thought, well, yeah, right away. And I come down into the emergency room. And I see this older woman. And she's watching TV, talking with a paramedic and her daughter, wide awake. And for any of you who've been around hospitals or sick folks before, people who've had cardiac arrest do not usually watch TV, talk 10 minutes afterwards. But what had happened here was this woman lived in a rural community, but it had a public paramedic system, and started choking on chicken that she was having for dinner. Her daughter noticed she was choking, called 911. While 911 was on the way, daughter started doing the Heimlich, wasn't able to get the chicken out. Paramedic arrived, did the Heimlich, couldn't get the chicken out. Woman lost her pulse, her heart stopped beating. But that paramedic who knew exactly what to do, flipped the woman on her back, started doing CPR because her heart wasn't breathing. Well, the first pump down on CPR, chicken shot across the room, hit the wall on the other side. That woman woke up en route to the hospital And because that paramedic arrived in 2 minutes, and that paramedic knew exactly what to do, that woman was admitted to the hospital because we had a policy that everyone who had a cardiac arrest had to be in the hospital at least 24 hours. And it was the most uneventful 24-hour admission we ever had in the ICU. Rural communities are dependent on good access to paramedics and EMS very quickly. We all benefit when we have a great system in place. That woman, I essentially wrote a note that day documenting how the paramedic saved her life, and I didn't do anything else for her. Second story. Anybody deliver a baby? Oh, there's got to be more than that. You know, giving birth to a baby? Where'd you deliver? Yes, ma'am.
Here in Defiance.
In Defiance County?
Yes.
Yeah. Someone back there. In Defiance as well? Is there still an OB ward in Defiance? Okay. Yeah. Well, I was down in Van Wert County and meeting with some the nurses at the rural hospital, Van Wert Regional. And, you know, rural county on the Indiana border. Van Wert Regional, actually an excellent rural hospital. In 2020, they knew that women were having to drive all the way to Toledo or Fort Wayne for their obstetrics care. And so Van Wert Regional built a new OB ward in 2020. But some of you may know this part of the story. In 2022, Ohio Health bought Van Wert Regional. And in 2023, on one-day notice, Ohio Health closed the OB ward at Van Wert Regional. And they emailed, this is true, they emailed the patients. Some of these are women in their third trimester, the contact information for the Fort Wayne and Toledo OB clinics. And they told the nurses at Van Wert Regional on the OB ward they'd be reassigned at the end of the next day. Those nurses asked to meet with the state rep for Van Wert County. Most of these are nurses who probably voted for the guy. That state rep wouldn't even meet with the nurses at Van Wert Regional. I believe that's what gerrymandering does, where politicians become unresponsive to our communities, our hospitals, and our needs. Third story. Anybody taken a loved one to a rural hospital for pneumonia or an infection sometime in the last year? Couple, yeah. You know, we were traveling down in Hawking County and visited the Hawking Valley Regional Hospital. And the chief nursing officer is walking me around, and I'm always very interested in how these hospitals are holding on. It's a 25-bed rural critical access hospital. And they said three things. One, the nurse said how proud she was of the care they provide at the Hawking Valley Regional Hospital. People would have to drive over an hour to get to Columbus for their care. The second thing she said is that they have 3 weeks cash on hand. That hospital's just barely got their head above water. And the third thing she said was that they are 1/3 Medicaid in the emergency room of the Hawking Valley Community Hospital. That hospital is in real trouble. And as soon as those Medicaid cuts hit, it's going to go under. We need to make sure to tell that story because every state rep, senator, and the congressperson representing Hawking County voted for that budget. It's going to cut 500,000 Ohioans from their health care, and it's effectively going to close the Hawking Valley Community Hospital. The last story I'll tell is a personal story to me. My mom and dad are family farmers, and they do farmers markets. And you know, one of the ways that they get income is people pay cash. But another way is women who are on the WIC program will get vouchers to be able to buy fresh fruits and vegetables for their kids under 5 years old. I was in Holmes County, where they used to give out 100 of these $30 WIC certificates, and they this year cut it back to 25. And that may sound like a lot of numbers, but we just need to think. In Holmes County, there were 75 women who used to get vouchers to be able to get a good set of fruits and vegetables for their family with under 5-year-old kids who were told they were out of certificates this year. That's a choice. So for those of you who deliver care, I know we've got some paramedics and first responders here, your work is so essential. We need to band together, whether you're a nurse, you're a doctor, you're an EMS, whether you're a firefighter, and make sure that every politician who represents us knows the value of the care you provide and that our communities rely on you. So thank you for letting me tell those stories, and thanks for inviting me to be here.
Ladies and gentlemen, next up, Eugenio Mollo, a clinical associate professor of law at the University of Toledo. Good evening, Eugenio.
Hi, good evening.
You have the floor.
I'm a clinical associate professor of law at the University of Toledo College of Law. I direct our immigrant justice clinic. I have a lot of pictures. I like pictures. Pictures of students, I'm really proud of them. Pictures of clients, I'm also proud of them. The point of the Immigrant Justice Clinic is to teach law students how to become lawyers. And we do that in an immigration practice setting. So we represent real clients on real cases. Law students are doing 99% of the work. I'm there to make sure they don't mess up, to make sure they don't commit malpractice before they're licensed, and to be their supervisor and their mentor. So these are, I've been doing this for 4 years. I've practiced immigration law for 19 years in Ohio. This was my first group of students a few years ago. This was my most recent last semester. We provide individual representation to immigrants in our community. We are currently representing more than 200 people in Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan. These are real clients, real students. Clients here have waived graciously confidentiality to share their pictures with all of you and share the good work that the Immigrant Justice Clinic does. So we provide individual representation. There's other clinics at the College of Law. There's a civil advocacy clinic that focuses on divorce, domestic violence, consumer protection, contract, landlord-tenant, a broad variety, and we oftentimes co-counsel cases with the civil advocacy clinic. So maybe my colleague, Professor Salem, will represent someone in their divorce and maybe their civil protection order, and will represent the same client in her petition for lawful permanent residency. We also work closely with police departments. I'm really proud, last academic year we worked closely with the Toledo Police Department and drafting some policies in place to help specifically immigrant victims of crimes. We found that immigrant victims were withholding information that would make all community members safe. So we worked with the Toledo Police Department, the Law Department, City Prosecutor's Office to help make the community at large safe, to encourage immigrant victims of crime to feel comfortable to report victimization to law enforcement. And we work a lot with community partners throughout Northwest Ohio. So some pictures there. So for the time that I have, I want to just talk about 3 things. The first is provide a very brief immigration law overview, and then talk about 3 executive orders that we've seen under the current President Trump administration, and talk about some immigration detention ramifications from the One Big Beautiful Bill, sometimes called the One Big Ugly Bill, okay? So the slide that I have on the screen right now, it's, even if you read the paper every morning or watch the evening news, sometimes it's hard to understand what this means unless you've practiced immigration law for 19 years and teach immigration law in law school. So I offer this slide to all of my students as a framework to understand different terminology when you watch the evening news and you hear about an executive order. When I'm wearing my lawyer hat, it's my job to help my clients climb this ladder of different immigration statuses. I want my clients, wearing my lawyer hat, to become U.S. citizens as quickly as possible. Okay? That's my job as their representative. In order to get there, we first need to get them a green card. lawful permanent residency. So that's one level down below U.S. citizens. Below that is where it gets really confusing. These are for visa holders or people who hold temporary work authorization. These are refugees. These are asylees. These are people here on visas. These are people here on temporary protected status. In the previous administration, President Biden expanded the list of eligible countries for TPS, temporary protected status. Hundreds of thousands of people, primarily from Venezuela and Haiti, have benefited from TPS. They were granted temporary reprieve, temporary pause from deportation, and issued work authorizations. President Trump and his administration are dialing those protections back. Another major immigration initiative from the previous administration was to bring people here legally on what's called parole status. Who benefited under this program under President Biden? Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans. President Biden brought in more than 500,000 people legally, and the commitment was, come here for 2 years, and then we'll figure out your immigration status after the 2 years. In a few minutes, I'll tell you where that program stands. At the bottom of this hierarchy are people who are undocumented. And the estimate right now, right, nobody waves their hand and, right, saying I'm undocumented, but the best count that we have, given Pew Hispanic Center data, is that there's about 14 million undocumented people right now in the United States. The immigration situation is very difficult to navigate. The legal situation, okay? There's only 4 ways in which people can get a lawful immigration status. They need a family petitioner, a spouse, a parent, a child over the age of 21, or a sibling. An employer can petition for them, not just any employer. It tends to be employers in STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math. There's some humanitarian bases to get a green card. And there's a program called the Diversity Visa Lottery, in which the government wants people from underrepresented countries to come to the United States. That's it, right? There's no, oh, if you just wait in line for 10 years, you can get a green card. That used to be the United States' immigration policy up until the early 1900s. But that hasn't been the immigration policy of the United States for 100 years. You need some sort of pathway in order to get a legalized immigration status. Or you could take President Reagan's approach back in 1986, where he legalized, through what's called an amnesty program or a legalization program, more than 3 million people in the United States. President Trump has taken a different approach on immigration than President Biden has. The biggest one, in my opinion, is that he has made a declaration that the government isn't going to exercise, prosecutorial discretion. What does that mean? Show of hands. It's the only time you'll raise your hand, maybe, for my part. How many people here, we have some police officers, you don't have to raise your hand, police officers. How many people here have been stopped by the police for speeding and not issued a traffic citation? Who was brave enough? Wow! Well, all of you, congratulations, are beneficiaries of prosecutorial discretion, right? The police officer could have written you a ticket for speeding, but out of the goodness of their heart, because you weren't doing something too criminal, for whatever reason, they exercised their discretion. The law doesn't say that they must write you a ticket. It's just that they can write you a ticket. Previous presidents, President Biden, President Obama, said, listen, if you're here in an undocumented immigration status, raising U.S. citizen kids, going to your job, not hurting anyone, you are a low priority for deportation. President Obama, if he were in the room, he would say, I would rather go after national security threats and public safety risks. Who cares if someone is here in an undocumented immigration status and doing their job and being a good community member? That's President Biden and President Obama's approach. President Trump says, no prosecutorial discretion. So I don't care if you've murdered 15 people and are a gang member, I am placing the same enforcement resources on you than someone who has raised 4 U.S. citizen kids here and is paying their taxes and happens to be in an undocumented immigration status. No prosecutorial discretion for anybody. So that is a major change from this administration to the previous administration. And President Trump is rolling back protections offered by the previous administration. So generally speaking, no more temporary protected status, no more parole. He's directed the Attorney General to reinterpret birthright citizenship protected by the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Close to half of the people that the United States is deporting right now have absolutely no criminal record. Sometimes CBS News and other media sources say, hey, this is a really big deal. Not to me, not to my students, not to my clients, right? I just told you, President Trump on his first day in office made it crystal clear. No prosecutorial discretion. This includes everyone, with a criminal record, without a criminal record. And the statistics show that many people, nearly half, of people being deported have absolutely no criminal record whatsoever. President Trump is winning at the Supreme Court, right? So there was a big Supreme Court case back in May. Like I said, President Biden for individuals from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. The deal under the previous administration was that you would be here for 2 years. President Trump said, I didn't say 2 years. The person before me said 2 years. So President Trump tried to rescind that 2-year commitment. People sued, and the president won at the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court handed the president a win on revoking parole. The point here is that, remember this hierarchy? President Trump is moving people from a legal status through his policies into undocumented people, right? He's making people undocumented by terminating temporary protections offered by the previous administration, okay? So earlier this year, the president signed, 4th of July weekend, the One Big Beautiful Bill, and there's massive money in place now for immigration enforcement. Over $100 billion to immigration and customs enforcement. In previous bills, it was only $8 billion. Now it's $100 billion for immigration enforcement. To border walls, to increase detention. Northwest Ohio now has 2 immigration detention centers. The traditional one was the Seneca County Jail. Now CCNO in Stryker has a contract with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. There's about $30 billion in the budget to hire more immigration and customs enforcement officers. On the ground, how is this affecting my clients? They're paying for immigration benefits or applications that previously were free. So right now, to file for asylum, there's a $100 filing fee. There's an annual fee for every year that asylum application is pending. The work permits used to be free. The government used to have this mentality. Hey, we're going to give you the first work permit for free. You're not authorized to work. How would you come up with any money? Renewals would cost money. But under the One Big Beautiful Bill, the initial work permit now costs $550. There's $1,000 for a parole application. There is money being made by detaining immigrants in our country and in Northwest Ohio. House Bill 26, I'll close with this. This will increase immigration detention in Ohio. It's called the Protecting Ohio Communities Act. It was introduced in January of this year. Representatives Josh Williams and Tex Fisher have sponsored it. There's 13 co-sponsors. What's the big deal here? So it requires every law enforcement agency in Ohio to participate with ICE and Border Patrol activities. And second, which is maybe a bigger thing, honoring federal detainer requests. Most counties honor those federal detainer requests. Franklin County, based on data from the Ohio Legal Services Commission, over the past 10 years, has not honored about 300 detainer requests. So Immigration and Customs Enforcement or Border Patrol would send a detainer to request to a local jail or prison, requesting that the local facility hold that person. Franklin County has honored the vast majority of those detainer requests, but for whatever reason, 298 times they haven't honored those detainer requests. Maybe they were low-level offenders, maybe they were U.S. citizens, who knows? But under this new House Bill 26, if it becomes law, those local jurisdictions would be forced to honor those detainer requests. Okay? So I will end it there, and I look forward to questions and discussions. Thank you.
U.S. Representative of Ohio's 9th District. I know Marcy. She knows rural Ohio, and we are tickled to death to have her here today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Congresswoman Marcy Kaptu.
Well, first I should ask this dear audience that is sitting through all these speeches, if you want to stand up and take a stretch before I get started, be my guest. You've been sitting there a while. Thank you very, very, very much, all of you, for joining us. I know we have several counties represented. My role is to talk a little bit about agriculture. Does anybody want to hear about that? If you do, raise your hand. Okay, well, there's some people that do. Okay, I serve on what is called the Agriculture Appropriations Committee. The region I represent is anchored by the South Shore of Lake Erie, and during my career, the state of Ohio has chosen to draw me all over the place. So you may well be in the district I represent. We have 8 counties, and we go all along Lake Erie's South Shore. We go all the way down in Sandusky County to Bellevue, but then north to the corner of Ohio with Indiana. So we have the Defiance County, Williams County, Fulton County. We have Lucas County, Ottawa County, Erie County, and then I mentioned Sandusky County and a little bit of Wood County. Not passing a bill means we're pulling the rug out from affordable education for all Americans. The goal is, by the people that did this in the Congress, they want to get rid of public education. Think about getting rid of your grade school, wherever you live, where you graduated from, or your high school. That's what they're talking about, destroying public education. And what's happening, I spent part of my life in Washington, the hundreds of thousands of federal workers who chose federal employment to help our nation's progress, whether they're in the Army Corps of Engineers, whether they're a forester, whether they put those horrible forest fires out west, whether they help us build new water systems, people who predict the weather. I don't know if you've noticed, but since the Weather Bureau lost some of its best meteorologists, the weather reports are really very shallow now. There's less information coming in. Anyway, they're making it harder for people to own a home, to buy a car that's affordable, and certainly, and this is what Democrats are fighting for inside the House and Senate, to have affordable health insurance. That's what we've focused most heavily on, because that's life and death. And now you might say, well, all this harm is necessary because when they passed a billionaire bonanza bill, that some people call the beautiful bill, it's not a beautiful bill, it's an ugly bill. It doesn't save a penny with the national debt. It adds $5 trillion more to our nation's accumulated debt, which is about $35 trillion now. That's not a good thing. That's a bad thing. But unless people can earn a living, and our unemployment rate is going up, by the way, in this part of Ohio, and that's not smart. But when you have that kind of debt, and they're putting $5 trillion more to give the richest people in this country tax breaks every year permanently for the richest $350,000 a year per billionaire. Think about that one, all right? The Democrats are fighting for, of the $5 trillion in debt that they are adding, we're saying take 1/5 of it and put it into health insurance for our people so they can afford it. The $5 trillion that's being sucked out of your tax payments to the federal government to pay for everything, whether it's the Fisheries Administration, wildlife, our wildlife refuges, all of the Environmental Protection Agency to help our cities and towns have clean water, rather than raiding all of that, where we could have put additional money, and we should really, but we focused on the American family. And I wanted to give you some numbers here. If we don't do this, a working family of 4 that earns $64,000 a year, husband and wife, your insurance premiums will go up $2,571 if we don't do this. If you're a senior citizen, man and wife earning $80,000 a year, because of the way the bill was written, your bill is going to double, your insurance bill. If you have a child who's autistic and your family's on Medicaid and it allows you to work or start a business, that Medicaid will be taken away. That's what the Democrats are fighting for. For us, people matter. Demos of the people. Democrats care about people. Now, billionaires don't care about tariffs either because they have investments in practically every country in the world. So they're playing them off against one another. For those of us here in America who pledged our honor here and our life here, we can't allow this kind of arrogant, destructive plunder to continue inside our borders. So I urge people to contact your senators. The ball is in their court now. The House passed a bill, I didn't vote for it, but it's taking away money from insurance premiums for all of you. You should calculate how much will be taken away from you, and I can help you do that. There's a little calculator we can give you, but that is immediate, and that is what we are fighting for, rather than giving billions to people who already have too much. They benefit with a little bit of a haircut, and should feel better about helping all of America afford health insurance. Tell them to pass the 2026 appropriation bill and use it to plug holes in the cost of health insurance for the American people. Now, I was out with cattlemen in Western Ohio recently, and I expected that we would talk about closed markets, which we did. We talked a lot about the hierarchical structure of the cattle industry and JBS and what's happening for these farmers, these cattlemen to be able to raise and sell their product. But the question I wasn't expecting from the audience was a question about health insurance. And that's what they wanted to talk about. They said, Marcy, our family of 4, we're paying over $26,000 right now a year. We can't afford it anymore. Don't raise it. And I thought, sir, I said, that's what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting to help you. Now, in terms of agriculture, and I'll be real quick, the slogan I go by is what America makes and grows America. We have not had a balanced trade account since the 1970s. Part of the economic pressure the American people are under is because the very large global companies have outsourced production and manufacturing, and even now in agriculture. And during the first Trump term in 2017, our farmers lost their markets to China because of President Trump. That's on the record. You can go to any agricultural library and you will find that. So one of the horrible things that happened was, for the region I represent, half the product in agriculture in every county I represent is corn and soy. Corn and soy. And of that being raised, half of it goes into fuels. I was the author, along with 2 senators, over 25 years ago, to create the biofuels industry. If it were not for the biofuels industry, our farmers would go bankrupt because of the loss of global markets. And China Argentina and Brazil have displaced our exports. And they're dealing with one another now. And I don't think, from the best advisors I have in agriculture, we're not going to get those markets back. So we have to help our farmers innovate. We have to find ways to help them find new product. One of those is in medicine. I don't have time to get all into that one, but pharmaceuticals. And for example, we worked with hog farmers many years ago to raise sterile hogs over in Ottawa County. And till this day, the University of Toledo Medical Center and other hospitals all over the country are transplanting the heart valves into human beings. And I felt really good. I was out in Defiance and I said that, and one man said, and I got one of them. And I was so happy. It really made me feel good. And others have come up to me and have said that. Farmers have come up at the county fair in Lucas County and said, I was a farmer involved in that at the very beginning. I said, you were a pioneer. You understood we had to find more markets for agriculture. So I'm your gal on agriculture if you want to think about the future. I want to thank Chris Gibbs. I'm sure I'm going overtime here, but I just want to say that we need America to be first in agriculture. We are importing 2/3 of our fruits and vegetables. That's not a good recipe for success. If you come to Delta, Ohio, or Huron, Ohio, and you look at what Nature Fresh is doing and what Muji Systems is doing with 4-season production, that is part of a new direction for U.S. agriculture. If you haven't seen that organic production, it's a sight to behold, and it is where we as a region have to diversify. And we are waiting for a farm bill. I want you to know this. There's a congressman from Pennsylvania, T. Thompson. He's a Republican, I'm a Democrat. We are friends. There are members that are friends, just so you know that. In fact, part of his district drains into Eastern Lake Erie. And he so wants to move a farm bill. But what the executive branch has done, they have been sending checks to farmers to pay for their crop losses from last year in order to kind of put a Band-Aid over the real blow of the loss of markets. And we have to keep our eye on the big target, which is the growth of markets and the development of those, and the food and fiber, forestry, and fuel for the American people ourselves. And we've got to help farmers to find those new markets and help them to be whole in their operations. So Mr. Chairman Thompson wants to move a bill. I want to help him. I've got provisions in that bill for our local school programs to buy the food that they serve the kids from local farmers. Do you know that there's no connection? And we bring millions of dollars to Northern Ohio. But if you go to the high school that your kids go to or your grandchildren go to, ask them where they get the food in the school and who cooks it for them. You might be surprised at the answer. And then go to the garbage dump, the garbage cans, and look how much the kids throw away. And say, hey, wait a minute, how come farmers in Northern Ohio and these schools can't get together through the state of Ohio and move local production into those food programs, into those senior programs? The last thing I'll say, I don't know if they allow questions or not, I know farmers want their product to get to market, and one of the programs I'm proudest of that I've had something to do with is something called the Senior Farmers Nutrition Program and the WIC Farmers Nutrition Program. We've helped over 150 farmers in this region get USDA special receipts, special coupons for redemption. And I've met young organic farmers who are selling their product directly to customers because of this program. And I am looking for more ways to use the power of the federal government to empower you as farmers and if you're vendors for local farmers, to move those products into first local places, local production, into our senior centers and so forth, as well as into schools. So I just thank you very much for your attention. Believe me, I work in bipartisan ways where we can, and I call out bad policy where that exists. I just got back from Ottawa, Canada. I'm so worried about our most closest trading partners. I'm worried about the price of peat, of potash, of wood coming over the border. I don't understand why there's a 25% tariff on Canada. I really don't understand it. Our economies are integrated, and they express to me, the parliamentarians up in Canada, their deep respect for the business people, the farmers, the processors of Ohio. They love doing business with you. Thank you very much.